Hey there. You're probably wondering why you're seeing this video again if you've already watched it, but basically, this is a re-upload of my Gathering Storm video from December because it got hit with a copyright strike, and it turns out that the opening song I used was a no-go. And I did try to claim it was fair use because I've seen plenty of other YouTube content creators use the song, but it was a no-go, and I'm not just going to let that video sit there and just be a dead video on my channel. So I went back in, I re-edited everything that was a problem, and now I'm re-uploading this video here. So if you can, thank you so much for watching it again. It very much helps support the channel. And again, I am so sorry for the re-upload, but this is what I need to do to survive, you know? So, yeah, please enjoy.
The dark gods rise. We must rise higher, the better to cast them down. This lumpen thing, this contains hope. The lord it belongs to will be a powerful symbol for your people. He will oppose the ruinous powers and turn back the encroaching darkness.
Gathering Storm. Dear God, was this one going to be a project? Gathering Storm was the end of an era for 40k, with 3 books entirely rewriting the Eye of Terror campaign that left Warhammer 40k in a permanent stalemate and stuck in M41999 for over 14 years. The Fall of Cadia came out in January 2017, then the second book, Fracture of Baal-Tan, in February, and the final book, Rise of the Primarch, came out in March, only 2 months after the campaign began, to prepare us for the start of 40k's new era, and bring back a character no one thought they would ever bring back. Reuploaded Guilliman. Now, I did promise to cover Gathering Storm before. Then I went back and reread the damn thing and realized there was too much information overload, with character names being dropped left and right, plot points from several other campaigns being mentioned, a whole new faction being introduced at the end of Book 1, with Book 2 being that faction's backstory, and Book 3 being where stuff actually gets going. Yeah, you can see why I covered the Fall of Cadia on its own. It's just a massive event that it was easier to talk about it by itself. The point is, I didn't want to overload you with information. The 3 books in this event have a lot going on, and it's taken me a lot of time to condense it down into a digestible format. Hell, I had to cover the Horus Heresy and the Black Crusades to even give you a starting point for this event. Even the Need to Know Eldar video is important to this one, because the Eldar are major players for this storyline. Now, you can probably see why it took me so long trying to figure out how to make this digestible for newcomers and those who want a refresher on what had happened. This doesn't mean the event is bad. Far from it. Gathering Storm does have a few problems though, and if you aren't into the Eldar, Book 2 can be a chore to read. As well, this is clearly a Chaos versus the Imperium and Eldar story, with little to no other factions appearing. Even Trazyn the Infinite pops out of the story after Book 1, meaning that if you're an Orc, Tyranid, Tau, or Necron player, there wasn't anything here for those factions, though the consequences of the event still affected those factions, and some others who hadn't yet been revealed. Now, what is Gathering Storm? What happened after the Fall of Cadia? Who are these mysterious Eldar who save the remaining defenders of Cadia? And why does the elf with a foot fetish seem desperate to get to Ultramar? Well, get comfy, because here's the story on 40k's version of a DC Comics crisis event. Okay, let's turn back the clock on just before Cadia got the Death Star treatment, shall we? On Craftworld Ulthway, the Farseer Eldrad Ulthran was cooking up a scheme to awaken the Eldar god of death, Ynid. The problem was that Eldrad did not have support for this from his fellow Farseers and Warlocks, as the plan involved not only spending the souls of the dead Eldar in the Infinity Circuit of Ulthwé, but also committing an actual Thanos plan by killing half the galaxy. But why did Eldrad want to commit galactic genocide? Well, he wanted to kill Slaanesh and freeze people from Slaanesh's dark grip on their souls. Cool motive, still galactic genocide, asshole! Eldrad did, however, find allies in the Harlequins of the Mask of the Midnight Sorrow troop. They went with Eldrad on a tour of the Eldar craft worlds, and while the troop put on a show to distract the different populations of the craft worlds, Eldrad and his allies siphoned souls from each craft world's Infinity Circuit without anyone noticing. When they finished gathering the souls, they headed to the moon of Koharia to begin the ritual. Now, Eldrad knew this moon was protected by the Imperium, so he used his own forces and a favor from Samhain to distract the Imperial defenders from its actual operations. Once the ritual was underway, a task force of the Death Watch arrived to do what they do best: mess up alien plans and kill them. The Death Watch are an interesting faction in and of themselves, but to quickly sum them up, they are a part of the Inquisition Ordo Xenos, and specialize in suicidal black operations. They are made up of volunteer Space Marines from different chapters. This Death Watch group, which was led by Watch Captain Artemis, found screwed up energy readings on the moon and quickly deployed to stop the ritual. The Death Watch was successful in stopping the ritual, mostly. It was half complete by the time Artemis and his forces got there, and Ynid, the god of death, was already awake, but incomplete, leading to the god needing to find a host to help keep its half-awake ass stable. It found its perfect host in the dark city of Komarog, where the Dark Eldar live. An Eldar Corsair who talked a lot of shit was getting her ass handed to her by a Drukhari witch in a Colosseum fight. Now, this Corsair was beaten so badly, she was in a state between life and death, which was perfect for Ynid, so it quickly possessed the dying Corsair, and the event was so devastating that it caused part of the Dark City to merge with the Warp for a few minutes, killing the Corsair's opponent, along with the audience. The Corsair's name is Yvraine, and while being flooded with godly energy, she was basically told this:
"Yeah, so I need an emissary, and you're perfect for that. So, here's a quest and stuff. Good luck."
When she woke up from her god-induced trance, Yvraine learned that all of the Dark City either wanted her dead or captured. So, with the help from her remaining allies, and a few who began to worship her because god stuff, Yvraine was able to escape Komarog and begin her quest. Yvraine's quest takes up the entire plot of Book 2, so we're going to speedrun these events. Yvraine was shown that she needed to collect several artifacts and do several tasks, so she and her allies regrouped on her home craft world Bael'Tan, which was currently under attack by the forces of Chaos. Now, to Yvraine's credit, she and her allies did help stop the Chaos invasion from destroying Bael'Tan, and stop the Slaanesh daemon known as the Mask from devouring every Bael'Tan Eldar soul in the Bael'Tan Infinity Circuit, only to drain the Craftworld's Infinity Circuit to power Ynid's avatar, then grab a specific relic sword for her lieutenant before fucking off, leaving its barren husk to drift through space, and half of Bael'Tan's population leaving with her. Then she went to several other craft worlds to repeat the process. Yes, she did save them from Chaos invasions, but she also left them horrifically damaged, and only managed to get 3 of the 5 swords, wielded by her, her lieutenant the Vizarch, and the Yakarn, who is Ynid's avatar. This quest, however, was getting to be a problem, and after uniting her growing forces with Eldrad Elthron, who told her that he was responsible for Ynid's awakening, the two knew they needed help, but the man they needed was currently in no state to help them. However, there was someone who could help them: Belisarius Cawl, who was currently on the run from the forces of Chaos in the Cadian system, alongside Saint Celestine and the Tsundere Inquisitor Greyfax. So the now newly dubbed Ynnari arrived at the end of Book 1 to save the Imperial forces fleeing Cadia. The survivors were whisked away into the webway, where the leaders of this ragtag group met with Yvraine and Eldrad, who had a special artifact. The two groups worked out a deal as their goals were aligned. Well, more like Khal and the Eldar worked out a deal, while the other Imperials just stood around and felt uncomfy. This deal would see the Ynnari and the Imperials work together to reach the realm of Ultramar, and although they didn't pop up on the main world of Macragge through the webway, they did pop up on a world nearby called Lapis. They helped the beleaguered defenders fight against the forces of chaos that were currently invading, and through these tense negotiations, with some threats, the Ultramarines reluctantly agreed to ferry the Alliance to Macragge, which was also under siege by the Black Legion. When they arrived, they met with Marneus Calgar, the chief librarian of the Ultramarines Tigurius, and a Grey Knight's Grandmaster by the name of Voldus. Khal and Yvraine told the group that they have a way of reviving the mortally wounded Primarch of the Ultramarines, who was being kept in a stasis field to keep the poor bastard alive after he was poisoned 10,000 years ago by his brother Fulgrim. However, the risk was that Guilliman needed to actually die to be revived, and Marneus and his honor guard were hostile to that idea. And before friendly fire incidents could happen, the forces of chaos broke in through the roof, giving Khal and Yvraine the distraction they needed to turn off Guilliman's life support, kill him, and then slap a new suit of armor on him, which revived him. And here, my friends, is where for the first time in 40k's history, a Primarch was returned. Reuploaded Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, was resurrected. And to celebrate that, he went on an immediate rampage to the traitor Marine forces inside his house, and after slaughtering them, turned around to see some elf lady with no shoes on, a guy he hired 10,000 years ago, some floating lady who radiated the light of the sun, a woman wearing a stupid hat with his father's advisor's personal symbol on it, a Marine radiating psychic energy, and a room of Space Marines wearing his colors and emblem staring at him like he was a god or something. This was put on the back burner until Macragge was secured, and with the help of the alliance of Imperials and Eldar, Guilliman quickly repulsed and defeated the forces of chaos. Then he turned around to everyone and told them, I need a couple of days. So he excused himself to his private quarters and proceeded to catch up on what he had missed in the last 10,000 years. To put this in perspective for you, Guilliman was wounded in the year M31121, and the last thing he saw was his brother-turned-demon prince slitting his throat, and he woke up to the bullshit of M41999. To say he was overwhelmed trying to catch up on everything was an understatement. After spending 3 days in isolation to get his bearings, research what happened, get frustrated at the lack of information, and be enraged by what the Imperium had become in his absence, Guilliman came back out to see the force of the Imperium rallying at Macragge, as word of his return got out fast, which was fine with him, because he announced that he was launching his Terran Crusade, a campaign to get his ass back to Terra and get a better idea of how fucked everything is, and find out why there is a massive tear in the galaxy that split it in half. The major issue facing the Terran Crusade was that the warp was a shit show, as the forces of chaos were celebrating Abaddon blowing up Cadia, meaning that warp travel was at best a total shit show, and at worst a nightmare snail crawl of demons, Chaos Space Marines, and me going on about One Piece to you, and why you should watch or read the Glorious Revolution series. All hail the glorious sun god Nika, and his avatar of cartoony antics! So, when I tell you Guilliman and his Terran Crusade ran the gauntlet, I mean they ran the gauntlet, fighting the tides of the warp, constant daemon incursions on their ships, insanity plaguing mortal crews, Chaos Space Marines jumping out like crappy indie horror game jump scares, and constant Emperor worship annoying the crap out of Guilliman. The Crusade was finally stopped by the greater demon Kairos Fateweaver and his red Corsair allies taking Guilliman, and by extension the entire Crusade force, hostage. They were taken to be held in the Blackstone Fortress that Abaddon had gifted Huron Blackheart years ago. Why didn't they just kill them all immediately? You'll have to talk to marketing for that one. While they were being held prisoner, a Deus Ex Machina appeared in the form of a Harlequin Shadow Spectre and a company of Dark Angel Legionnaires, led by a Marine calling himself Cypher. Now, Guilliman was immediately suspicious of the Dark Angels and their leader, because Cypher had his brother Lionel Johnson's sword, a sword that Guilliman broke during the Horus Heresy, because the Lion was being a dickhead. But with the help of the Shadow Spectre, the two came to an agreement. Cypher and his Dark Angels would help the Terran Crusade break out and get to the Webway portal gate inside the fortress, if Guilliman would let Cypher have an audience with the Emperor. Guilliman reluctantly agreed to the deal. Cypher and his Dark Angels got to work, freeing Guilliman and his Terran Crusade forces and their Ynnari allies. They grabbed all their weapons and stormed the Webway Gate Chamber, steamrolling past the Red Corsairs and Kairos, as they were busy dealing with a Khorne invasion that wanted to kill Guilliman. After managing to fight their way through, Guilliman and his forces ran into another snag. There were two doors Guilliman could use, one that would take him right to the throne room, and one that would take him to Terra's moon. He had a sneaking suspicion that a Daemon of Tzeentch was involved, and Yvraine had reported some Thousand Sun shenanigans throughout their travels. So Guilliman knew his traitor brother Magnus was watching him. So, knowing this, Guilliman chose the moon door, knowing that Magnus wanted him to choose the door that would lead to the throne room. And Guilliman's hunch was right, because after his forces stepped out onto the moon, they were immediately assailed by Magnus the Red and his Thousand Sons. Turns out Magnus wanted to use Guilliman to get to the Emperor and kill their hypocritical father before Guilliman could try to talk to him. But that plan fell through, and now Magnus found himself stuck between his exhausted brother's Terran Crusade and the Defenders of Terra, including the Sisters of Silence, the Grey Knights, and the entire Imperial Fist chapter and their star fort, the Phalanx. Magnus was quickly defeated, yeeted back to the Webway portal, and the portal was destroyed. Once he was safe and back on Terra, Guilliman was met with parades and celebrations. Though once he could, he and his allies beelined it for the Imperial Palace, meeting with the Custodes and their current Captain General, Trajan Valoris, who wasn't very happy to see Guilliman, but did agree to let the Primarch see his dad. Before they entered the throne room, though, Guilliman turned on Cypher and had the mysterious Dark Angels arrested because Guilliman sure as hell wasn't going to trust someone with his missing brother's broken sword anywhere near his dad, though the mysterious Cypher disappeared shortly after being detained. With that mess sorted for now, Guilliman entered the throne room and had a conversation with his father. As revealed in the book Dark Imperium, it was a short conversation about how Guilliman could fix the Imperium, to which the Emperor responded, "I don't fucking know, dude, but good luck." Basically giving Guilliman the green light to do whatever he saw fit. So, after leaving the throne room, Guilliman immediately fired all the High Lords of Terra for their incompetence and hired new ones. He also revealed a secret project Khal had been working on since the end of the heresy: the creation of the Primaris Marines. With Terra secured and Guilliman reorganizing Imperial forces, integrating his newly revealed Primaris Marines, he would help stabilize the Imperium, or die trying. The event ends with Guilliman forming an alliance with Eldrad Ulthran and the Ynnari, as well as preparing the eventual Indomitus Crusade. This leads into the events of Pariah Nexus, Psychic Awakening, the Plague Wars, and the infamous Nakman Gauntlet campaign. The Imperium, and 40k as a whole, would never be the same again. The Gathering Storm event was basically the Imperium's Infinity War moment, where everyone from the Imperium to the Eldar to the Forces of Chaos got involved. Of course, this is extremely overwhelming to any newcomers, but Gathering Storm wasn't meant for newcomers. It was meant to push the story past the eternal wall that was the Cadian storyline, as well as following through on some stories in the Horus Heresy and the 13th Black Crusades, which would lead us into 40k doing a soft reboot with the release of 8th edition, with its rule set changing the tabletop game to become something newcomers could enjoy, while also removing the problems of rules bloat that plagued 40k for 7 whole editions. Of course, the event would bring back Reuploaded Guilliman and Magnus the Red, the first 2 playable Primarchs in modern 40k, with Mortarion of the Death Guard arriving shortly afterwards in 8th edition, along with whole new model ranges for the Space Marines, Thousand Suns, and Death Guard armies. Hell, even Cypher of the Fallen Dark Angels and Celestine got brand new models, and the Ynnari became a playable faction. It was Games Workshop's attempt to revive 40k, and it succeeded. Now, was it perfect? No. But it was meant to get us into M42, and with a massive story update, the tabletop game followed suit. It's thanks to this event, and 8th edition, that 40k was finally able to reach the mainstream, not only giving newcomers a path to join in on the hobby that ruins wallets, but also a massive storyline to give veterans a jumping-on point, while saying goodbye to old characters that we knew weren't going to come back. An old players step down, new players step up kind of thing. To be honest, scheduling this video for the end of the year was kind of poetic in a way for me. The end of an era, really. Much like how 40k pushed past Cadia, I pushed past TikTok and the bullshit it fed my brain, trading out burnout and vertical scrolling videos for stuff I feel fulfilled creating, and actually being able to do things my way, along with learning useful skills and making incredible new friends along the way. Sure, I gave up 100k followers, but I was miserable and felt like I wasn't going anywhere, and I was making stuff I wasn't happy with. Plus, TikTok just sucks as a platform anyway, and it lets people steal my content actively along with making money off my hard work and not giving me a dime of it. What I am trying to say is, thank you so much to those who did follow me over, and to the new fans here, thank you so much for subscribing and watching my videos. If you're a newcomer, hi, I'm Announcer of Games, 40k innkeeper, streamer, and editor. My job is to help newcomers understand the games they want to get into or learn about the stories of tabletop games or video games, with my streams being me gaming with friends or chilling and chatting with you guys. If you want to support me, I have a Patreon which has an exclusive series on it, and you get to see my videos early. And when we get to 15k subs here on YouTube, I'll review 40k's first-person shooter, Fire Warrior. When we come back next time, my friends, we'll be revisiting the game many claim to be the black sheep of the Halo franchise. The game, many say, killed the series, and has left 343 a mess ever since its release. Halo 5, Guardians. It's been a decade since the game came out. Is it as bad as we remember? Or is there something else there that we didn't take into account? Well, come back on December 20th, or right now on Patreon, to see what I found out. I love you all, and I'll see you all very soon.